Hello and welcome to another tutorial. This might look familiar if you have done this one before with the cutscene and creating a cutscene using Cinemachine, and you've already done that video. That's perfect. If you have your own scene and you want to know how to activate your cutscene within Unity from a player, that is also perfectly fine. We can. That's what we're going to do today in this tutorial. So there's a couple of things you need to do to kind of prep this before we get it going. So I've kind of just left it how we were. So if we just go where we were before, as you can see, we can see the game view, gone to Akai, and then she's going to go and sneak and grab that gun, and then our cutscene will end. Brilliant. So today we're going to try and trigger this. So what I'm going to do first is, or what I've already done is, I created an empty game object here called cutscene underscore comp for my composition. And what I did was I copied or duplicated all of my assets. So even if I turn these ones off, I still have assets here. So I still have my idle, I still have my table, I still have my Akai. So what all I did, I left the SWAT guy alone, I left the table alone. And what I did was I actually added my own Akai character and gave the movement, as you can see there. And if you want to know how I did that, we'll have a look at the third person script and my other previous videos. That's all there, and that's how we did that. So for now, my main camera isn't attached to my character, but if you can see in my scene, you can see my scene that my character is walking around, and there you go. So let's say this was just our game and we were walking around, and we would activate our scene just like that. Okay, awesome. So first things I'm going to do is whenever we do a trigger, so we're going to walk into a Ontriggerenter, and that will activate. So our player is going to do that. So my Akai player is going to do that. So that you can see, I've got one within my cutscene. I do have all the assets again, all just for my cutscene, and then I have them in my normal game. This works best. So if you think about it, you need a double of everything for your cutscene, and then another one in kind of real world. This is how you can see sort of like in cutscenes where the graphics might be a little bit upscaled. This is how they kind of do it. They upscale the graphics within the cutscene and then sort of downscale them for the gameplay and everything like that, because render times, settings, and just lagging. So we're not going to do that here, but we can just make sure that you've got a cutscene composition with all of everything that's in your cutscene. And then obviously I've then created my Akai player, and then my duplicate of the SWAT team guy and the table, as you can see highlighted here. So what I'm going to make sure is that my Akai player, so my player that I can actually move, is tagged as player. Okay, because we don't want to make silly mistakes like this. And when we activate our trigger, our scene won't work, or our cutscene will not play. Okay, awesome. Once we've done that, I'm going to take my main camera, and I'm going to parent this with my Akai player. So we can see, there we go. So we've got Akai, we've got the hips, so the IK, and then the main camera itself. Fantastic, that's cool. And let's just make sure, yep, that's all good. And right, okay, so next we're going to make our trigger. So we're going to make our trigger from our cutscene comp and our Akai within that scene there. So if you have a look, there we go. So we can double click, and that's the Akai I want to concentrate on. So our cutscene Akai, essentially, not our player one over here, this one that we've got highlighted here. So what I'm going to do is we can just quickly add a create an empty, and that's parented on. And what we're going to do is name this cutscene trigger. Cutscene trigger. Awesome. So if I move, if I click on the transition, you can see, there we go. I can center that a little bit more, and that's perfect because that's already parented with Akai right there. Cool, I'm happy with that. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is actually take my cutscene trigger and unparent it from Akai. I was just using that Akai as just a guide, so I'm just going to unparent that, put that there. Fantastic. So we need two components to make sure our trigger is appropriately triggered. So first thing is a box collider. So let's type in box collider. Make sure his trigger is checked. Fantastic. Quite a big collider, but we can edit the settings just to make sure our character definitely is going to hit this box. So if you think I'm going overboard, I am. I just want to make sure that my player is definitely going to walk into this. That looks good enough. Yeah, that looks like a good size. Okay, fantastic. Okay, and the next thing we're going to add is a rigid body, and make sure use gravity is unchecked. Okay, awesome. So the last thing I'm going to do just before we prep this all together, or two things, is number one, all my virtual cameras that we did in the last tutorial, I'm going to put these virtual cameras into my cutscene comp. Okay, so they are now living in there. Going to close cutscene comp, and I'm going to make sure cutscene comp is not visible. Okay, so that takes away my everything within that cutscene, including the cameras, including the timeline. Everything is gone. It's not active, and so once our character walks into that trigger, we're going to set that active, and that will play our cutscene. Okay. So next thing I'm going to do is make sure our main camera, as you can see with our Akai Player, is parented, well, is already parented, but is aligned with our Akai Player character, which is currently not. So let's zero this player out, and hopefully we can, there we go, pull that back a little bit. A little bit more. Yeah, awesome, fantastic. So it looks like a normal sort of third-person game. So if we play this, just make sure that camera's on there. It's got our idle pose, and then we can walk around. Awesome, fantastic, cool. It's exactly what we want. That's working good. Okay, so let's look to our script. Now we've done all of that, and right click, create, and script, and we're going to call this cut scene underscore activate. Okay, and we're going to open this within Visual Studio, and Visual Studio, awesome, fantastic. So this is one I've made earlier, so you could either completely cheat and take this, pause it quickly and steal all of it, or you can watch me write it all again and understand why we are putting all of this together. So within our cutscene activate, first thing we need to do is name our components. So our first component is our public game object. Visual Studio is not talking to me. That's not good. Come on. Talk now. No, that's not helpful, is it? Okay. Oh yeah, it's totally dead. Oh, it's not liking anything. There we go. There we go. Let's give that a bit of a refresh. Brilliant. Okay, let's just make sure that's okay. Oh, that's not okay either. What's happened? Mono behavior is not talking to it. Okay, if you ever have that, just close it and open it again. There you go. Even Even the finest tutorials can go wrong, but that's okay. It's no worries. It happens. It's the real world. Okay, so we don't need any of these actually, so I'm not going to worry about that. So there's two variables that we need to think about here, and one of them is actually in fact our camera. It's not as simple as just creating a private on void trigger and activating that trigger to set active is true. We must think about our camera as well, because at the moment our camera is parented on our Akai Player, but we want that camera to then come switch around and do everything for our virtual cameras as well, because that is our camera brain. Okay, so what we're going to do is say public game object, and our first thing can be our cutscene comp, so our cutscene composition, and then we can call up a transform, a public transform, as we are, even though we're calling up our camera, we are changing and taking those positions for our camera. So if we do the underscore main cam, then we can do private void on trigger enter. There we go. So we then have to say if other dot tag equals player, we then can say let's call up our cameras first to make sure that's working. Camera dot main, because it's our main camera, dot transform, and firstly we'll take the position over, so camera dot position. Then we can take over our rotation, so dot main dot transform dot rotation, and then we can say cutscene.comp dot set active, and that is going to be true. Okay, so what we need to do is we've got red lines under our camera.main dot transform position and rotation, and what we need to do there is just get rid of those semicolons because we're not quite done yet. So we're saying the main camera and the main transform position is going to be equal to the main camera's dot position dot transform. Okay. Main cam dot transform dot position, and same again, but this time. So it now knows to change its position and rotation to that variable that we put up there of main camera. So if we command and save that, and we're going to add our script to cutscene trigger, and let's add that onto there. And then you can see that obviously with our variables we've prompted two things. So our cutscene comp, so that's our first one, so click and drag that to there, and our main camera, which is there, main camera, so main camera is in there. There we go. Okay, so let's give this a quick test. If we click play. As you can see in my scene, you've still got the trigger up, so I'm just going to target that trigger, and hopefully I can walk into it, and hopefully, there we go. As you can see, there we go. Playing fine, fantastic, amazing stuff. Okay, so if we play that again, you might notice a slight issue where we find our trigger, walk into our trigger, we have two Akais as we can see, because we duplicated one of them, and the other one is for our cutscene. So what do we need to do there? Well, there is actually a simple fix. So what we can do is if we go into our cutscene comp, and that will move our camera for now. Let's make sure that is visible. and in our timeline we can actually add an activation track. So an activation track is essentially setting almost like a ball or a boolean within your timeline scene, but within the timeline scene only. Okay, so we can make our Akai playable character active or not active within the scene. Okay, so let's go plus and let's go to activation track. Once we click that, activation track will prompt us for a game object. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag active over to only camera 3, or just right at the end, so it comes back at the end of our scene. So our Akai player character will only be active for the very end of our scene here, so it can come back into play. Okay, but only problem is, if we look in the hierarchy at our Akai _player, we can see that we've got our main camera within Akai Player. So what we need to make sure is that we don't drag in Akai Player here, is that in fact we have to drag Akai there. So we make sure for it on our comp, and we click and drag Akai, just the model, into there, just like that. Cool. Obviously our timeline at the moment is over that, and that will make sure Akai is not active in that part. Okay, so it becomes active, as you can see, just there. And this is for our timeline though, remember. So as our timeline needle will play, obviously at the start of the game our Akai player will be there. Okay, so let's just manage this main camera. So this is an issue, continuing issue that I'm having with let's make it more active. Hopefully you can get it fixed at some point, but at the moment every time I click on my comp, on my timeline comp, the camera reverts back, so we will have to write a brand new script for that, and I will write and probably do an update video, but for now we'll just see how this goes. Cool. Okay, so what we want to make sure is just our cutscene is working and that we don't have two Akais in our scene. Okay, so let's press play. We need to find that trigger. I'm just going to quickly click on trigger so it appears in our scene, and then I can walk up to it. Oh, what have I done? Let's go out of play. So make sure I click on trigger, press play, and so we're going to just watch our game view. There we go, working perfectly. So I've only got one Akai in our game view now. Perfect. And you can see Akai in the scene just pop up right at the end. Okay, let's just show you one more time and that's all working. Let's click on maximize play, so press play. There we go. The camera's not the best view, I must admit. Let's try and find that box. There we go. Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this. There is that slight bug with the main camera, but for now our player movement into that trigger is then activating our cutscene. Okay, thanks guys. See you soon.